Welcome to 45-minute gym sessions, a series that we are going to be going through where you can do 45-minute sessions at the gym and still get an efficient workout and take your physique to the next level. Today we are going to be looking at legs. How can we build strong defined legs without squatting? The squat is one of the best exercises that you can do if you want to build a strong lower body and build strong, toned and defined legs. However, it is also one of the most difficult exercises to execute, and more often than not, people do them incorrectly, which can ultimately lead to injury. One of the most common injuries that people get from squatting is either knee injuries or lower back injuries. So how can you get well-defined legs without squatting? So let's look at a couple exercises that you can do without squatting. The first one is the seated leg curl. I love this machine because it is putting you in a locked position. You have literally no ways of using any kind of leverage or momentum from any other muscles except your hamstrings. So the first thing that you want to do when you are performing this exercise is ensure that you are seated on the chair properly. Make sure that your bum and your lower back are placed against the pad. The easiest way for you to do this is just by grabbing onto the handles tightly and adjusting the seats to ensure that you are comfortable. The second thing you want to do is put the pad on your thighs and not on your knees. This is a common mistake that I often see where people put the pad on their knees, but this is only going to cause discomfort and this can hurt you further down the line. So make sure that the pad is above your knees and on your thighs. Third thing that you want to do is make sure that the roller pad is on your Achilles instead of it being on your heel. The reason why we want to do this is it's going to be more comfortable for you to lower the weight with the correct tempo when it is on your Achilles and not on your heel. So make sure that it's placed directly on your Achilles. Now, tempo is going to be extremely important when doing this exercise. Tempo is simply the speed at which you lower and release the weight. You don't just want to be jerking the weight up and down, but you always want to be in control. For me, the easiest way is just to count 3 seconds when I lift the weights up and also to count 2 seconds when I curl the weight down. Second exercise that we're going to be doing is the lying hamstring curl. The first thing that you want to check is your leg position. Just like the seated leg curl, make sure that your thighs and not your knees are on the pad, because again, we want to avoid as much discomfort as possible. So do not put your knees on the pad, but put your thighs. So your knees should be just lower than the pad. Grab the handles as tightly as you possibly can and sink your legs into the pad. So one thing again that we want to do is make sure that we are not using any leverage. So we don't want to be using our lower back or our hips to help us lift the weights up and down. We want to be using just our hamstrings. By sinking down, by just squeezing the handles as hard as possible, that's going to ensure that our hamstrings are the main contributor to lifting the weight up and down. So grab onto the handles, sink your legs in, and make sure that you are not using any momentum or leverage from your lower back or from your hips. As you progress through your sets and as you progress through your training, you will notice that your hips will start coming into play and your bum is going to start coming up and down. Now this isn't too big of a problem, but again, we want to put as much tension on the hamstrings and we want to isolate the hamstrings as much as possible. So if you find that your bum is lifting up and down the pad too much, it's probably an indicator that you are using too much weight or that you are using too much momentum and leverage from other muscle groups in your body. So just lower the weight, and again, watch out for the tempo. For me, it's a 3-2-1 tempo, so 3 seconds when I'm lowering the weight and then 2 seconds when I'm lifting the weight up. Moving on to exercise number 3, and this is a unilateral exercise. Now, unilateral exercise simply just means training one side of the body each time. Instead of combining 2 sides of the body, i.e. using both legs, we're going to be using a single leg when we do this exercise. This exercise is called the single leg curl. It is a great exercise that you can do to isolate each side of your hamstrings. The first thing that you want to do when doing this exercise is ensure that your thigh is firmly on the pad, and again, that the roller pad is on your Achilles. Do not place the roller pad on your heel. I see this often at the gym where people are curling the weights up and down using their heels. Make sure that you are not doing this. The roller pad should be on your Achilles. Also, remember not to use any kind of momentum, again, by holding the handles as tightly as possible and sinking your thigh into the pad. That's going to ensure that you are not using momentum from your lower back or your hips and sometimes your glutes. Now remember guys, the hamstring is not a big muscle, so it cannot handle a lot of weight, unlike the quads. So when you are increasing the weight, make sure that you are doing small increments. So instead of adding a 5 or a 10 when you're moving from one set to the other, just add a 2.5. And then if that weight is too easy for you to do, then you can add another 2.5. And that already is a 5 kilogram increase. But if you add a 10, you might find that for one set you do a good quality 10 reps, and then for the next set you only do 3 or 4 reps. That's not what we want to do. We want to progressively lift the weights in terms of our reps. So when you are going down, try and do at least 10 and then 8 reps. So now we are done with our hamstrings. We're going to move over to our quads. So the first exercise that we are going to be doing is the seated leg press. Depending on the length of your legs, you will want to adjust the seat to find your most comfortable position. Another thing that you must consider is your foot position. With the leg press, when you place your feet higher up on the platform, that is going to hit more of your hamstrings and your glutes. And when you place it lower on the platform, that's going to hit more of your quads. Now, because this is a quad exercise for today, we're going to be placing our legs lower on the leg press platform instead of placing them higher. Now, when you lower the weight, make sure that you are in control and using the correct tempo. As I mentioned before, you don't just want to lower the weights and push the weights up without having any control. So again, for me, I'm doing a 3-second tempo here. So when I am lowering the weights, I am counting in my head 3, 2, 1, and then pushing the weight up after my 3 seconds. Another thing to consider is your knees. You always want to keep your knees slightly bent at the top of the movement. You do not want to lock out your knees, because when you do that, you put all the load and all the tension away from your muscles and onto your joints. And remember guys, our joints are not as strong as our muscles, so therefore our joints cannot handle the same amount of pressure and load as our muscles. So when you are locking out your knees, keeping them straight like that instead of slightly bent, you are going to hurt yourself. You're going to put too much pressure on your knees and not enough pressure on the muscles. Not only is this bad in terms of muscle growth, but overall health is just bad, because you're putting too much pressure and it will later catch onto you. The older you get, the more your joints are going to get sore, and that's just not good for longevity purposes. So always make sure that you are not locking out your knees and you always have them slightly bent at the top. If you have knee pain, then you can always use either knee sleeves or knee wraps when you are doing this exercise. This again is going to remove the load away from your knees and onto your muscles, your thighs. Our fifth and final exercise for the day is the hack squat. This is a great alternative to the traditional barbell squat. Now, if you're someone who doesn't like squatting, or you find that the squat rack is always occupied at the gym, then the hack squat is definitely a great alternative. Similar to the leg press, your leg position is going to play a critical role in what muscles you are hitting. So the further up we go with our legs, the more glutes and the more hamstrings this exercise is going to hit. However, if we bring our legs a little bit closer to our body, we're going to be hitting more of our quads and less of our glutes and our hamstrings. Now, how low should you go? How low should you go? Now, this depends on each individual and their preference. For me, I like to stop when my thighs are parallel to the floor. Any lower than that, I find that my back starts curving, and it also puts pressure away from my thighs and onto my lower back. So I like to stop 90 degrees before going up again. Again, tempo is extremely important. I cannot emphasize this enough. The two things that you want to do when you are lifting any kind of exercise, but especially with legs, is number one, you are using a full range of motions where you are completely going up and completely going down. You're not just doing half reps. And number two is tempo. You always want to have some kind of tempo, because that is going to allow you to put the muscle under tension, but also allow you to be in control. So make sure that you are counting in your head whatever your tempo is. For me, again, it is 3 seconds when I'm going down and 1 second when I'm exploding up. Make sure that your knees are always slightly bent at the top of the movement. Like the leg press, we don't want to remove the tension away from our quads and move it onto our knee joints. That's just going to lead to injury and discomfort further down the line. Okay, so that concludes our first episode of the 45-minute gym sessions. Thank you so much for watching. If you're interested in watching some of my other videos, I'll link them above here. Just click on them. And if you enjoyed this video, please like, share, and subscribe. I'll see you guys on the next one. Bye.